following podcast is being brought to you by the Defy Life Podcast Network.
All right, and we are back for another edition of the Pro Wrestling Showdown podcast. I am regular Scott, and with me, as always, is the wrestling connoisseur himself, Mr. JD Oliva. JD, welcome back for another edition. Welcome to 2021. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing very good, man. Just some technical difficulties to no one's shock. Me and technology are best friends before we got started. So, but besides that, I'm doing great. How about you?
Oh, busy. The in-laws have the kid for the weekend, so my wife and I both decided to take the weekend and work. So we're just knocking as many doors down as we can in our own home offices this weekend as possible.
That's the adult life, right? When you get
really
weekend time off, you spend it working, getting work done.
I got a book done last night about 3 o'clock, so I'm pretty excited about that. Been working on that for a while. Today I wrote a newsletter email, and then I wrote 3 different articles for various websites. So I got stuff done.
Hey, you got a good amount done.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy. And I got more to get done the next couple days because I got another new little job.
Just another hat, huh? You're just a man of many hats.
Well, you kind of have to when you're a freelance guy. My video business died in 2020, so I need to replace that income. And the writing has been the wrestling writing has been a surprise. You know, I've been with Fight Game since, just November. It's only been 2 months. And then I got a job with a website that you probably heard of called WrestleJoy.
Yes, yeah.
And there was a little bit of a controversy with them earlier this fall. They're in the process of trying to kind of rebuild, and they are looking for writers. And I'll be honest with you, between friends, the pay is really good in considering the space. So I applied, and they offered me a position, and I'm going to be writing with them too, along with Fight Game, and I'm doing movie reviews now with Combat Republic, our buddy Mike Gilbert. And man, so I'm keeping myself busy. The whole WrestleJoy thing, they got a little bit of a reputation for, I don't know what this even means, but toxic positivity. I don't even know if that's a thing. It sounds so weird.
If that's not an oxymoron, I don't know what is.
I know, it's so bizarre. I've never had a problem with Andy or Amy. They've always been nice to me, and they're giving me an opportunity to write. And I told them that I'm not interested in redoing what I do with Fight Game. So I'm not going to do any of the Japanese or amateur wrestling coverage stuff that I do with Fight Game, and I don't want to compete with any of the other writers on the site who probably want to cover what's going on now. I'm just going to write retrospective pieces for them. That's it. I'm just going to write about old stuff.
See, and that's why you'll always be able to find work, and why people are kind of seeking and wanting you is because you're able to come at it in so many different angles. Even if there's another lane that's been taken, like you said, you don't want to take somebody else's spot, so you just create your own entirely different lane. So that's awesome. Congratulations, man. That's great.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what I did with Fight Game. I brought in amateur wrestling to them, and I told them I cover, everybody loves New Japan, so I said, you know what, I'll talk about Noah. I'll talk about Dragon Gate. Give me all Japan. And it's been fun. It's opened up some nice little doors for me. I spent the majority of my day-to-day writing my first WrestleJoy article, and it's going to be about how Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan's WrestleMania 5 story was a play on Macbeth.
Very nice, very nice. Bringing a little Shakespearean element to the wrestling world.
Yes, I'm not Dave Meltzer. I don't pretend to be. So I'm just gonna do my thing, and that's the kind of stuff you're gonna get with me. And I'm not, me. I'm not a particularly overly positive person by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that's going to shoot that whole thing down, as they want just people who are, blindly saying everything is great, because that's not me. And I'm going to talk about some stuff that the things about wrestling that I like, and It's like I said, a lot of retrospective. We are going to get critical from time to time, and this time around, I got to kind of embrace my wackier side, so it's kind of fun. I'm looking forward to people reading it.
Good, and tell everyone where they can find you on your socials.
Easiest place to find me is at JD_Oliva on Twitter. I got a Facebook page that mainly focuses on my writer business. It's JD Oliva Writer on Facebook. Got an Instagram page, JD Oliva Writer. It's a little bit of everything. So that's where you can find me. Buy some books. That's my main gig. Is I write novels. I'm on Amazon, Kobo, Barnes and Noble, anywhere you can find a good book. Oh, speaking of books, I also got my first #1 Amazon bestseller.
Yes, another congratulations in store for that. I saw that. Very big news.
I didn't do much. I wrote an essay for Voices of Wrestling, probably one of my favorite podcasts. They put out their New Japan year-end retrospective every year, and I jumped on and I wrote a piece about the tag team title situation in New Japan this year and how we thought that Kota Ibushi and Tanahashi together might be like a new holy demon army, and it wasn't. It was just another bump in the road to get to Ibushi's spot this week at WrestleKingdom. So, but it was fun, man. I don't know if those guys appreciate it, but in my world, getting an Amazon #1 tag is really, really big. And I think they do it every year for at least a couple hours. So it's like, this is what we do. And I was trying to say, man, this is good, guys. This is big. And they're just used to it. So it entertained me. And so I finally had to circumvent the system and got a #1 bestseller on Amazon. So
hey, listen, from here on out, you can officially say you are a #1 bestseller on Amazon.
And I will.
As you should. As you 100% should. You are a part of that book, so you 100% should. No, that's great. Anything else, man?
Yeah, it's a heck of a book, man. I highly recommend everybody pick it up. I mean, you're not going to find better analysis of New Japan Pro Wrestling than this book. Chris Samsa is amazing with his statistical stuff. It's got a foreword by John Moxley, my Fight Game Media compatriot, John Moxley. I never get tired of saying that. And, yeah, man, it's been a cool week.
Hey, doesn't sound like there's too much to be complaining about right there. Very nice. You can find me on Twitter at @NE4MarvelVsDC. Not nearly as busy. Just got one podcast on the side. That's all I got going on. You can find this podcast at Showdown. One
of the best nerd culture podcasts in the game. To be frank,
I appreciate that. It's very kind words. Shout out to Uncle Oz.
Uncle Oz.
Yeah, shout out to Uncle Oz. He and speaking of Uncle Oz, he actually did bring up Brodie. We'll jump right into it. He actually did bring up Brodie Lee's death on the show, and I didn't even want to talk about it then, just because I wanted to kind of save all the thoughts really for this show, and just because this is something that kind of, and I think a lot of fathers kind of feel the way. It kind of hits home a little bit because it's like he's a young guy, he's got a young family, and I just really only wanted to talk about this one time, get it all out the way once, and kind of leave it at that. I don't really want to harp on it too long.
No, this one hurt, man. I mean, like I'm in similar age to Brodie Lee. I've got a little boy myself, and that's this week was tough for me too. In that it would have been my mom's 66th birthday the other day, and every year on this time I kind of go through some mental hurdles, and usually I'm usually coaching wrestling this time of year to kind of help me get over it. And this year we're not doing that. Like everything's shut down, so I kind of had some time to live with my psychosis, and then having this jump on top of it doesn't. I don't know. It's made for a tough few days, quite frankly.
Yeah, it just seems kind of be like the well, at least to the outside world, obviously they've known about this, but to us, it's just the randomness of it, and kind of, out of the blue again to us, because this is all new information to us as far as this, kind of situation that he's been battling. So, yeah, it's a tough one, and it's kind of sad to see, and this is our 3 count for the news this week. We're going to spend at least the first 2 on Brodie Lee, and kind of the pros and cons of, actually there's no pros to this, but just the terrible stuff that have come out of his death in the different ways, and a lot of what I saw on Twitter, and it became people weren't celebrating his life like they, instead it became a this versus them type thing, and it was nice to see wrestlers from both companies just putting everything aside and just being like, yo, let's just celebrate this dude's life instead of trying to, there's no war here, there's no rivalry here, let's just celebrate this guy. So I appreciated that aspect from both companies, and I thought AEW did a really good job as far as putting on a good show and being able to really celebrate him. And I felt like they did him proud with their show on Wednesday.
The rivalry thing is between the fans and the companies. The guys, having multiple companies is good. It gives them options to work. Brodie Lee being the best example. That was a guy who was creatively lost in WWE. Like, just didn't fit. Like, he wasn't what Vince McMahon really wanted. Mm-hmm. So he got the opportunity to go to AEW, took over the worst act in the company. Something that a year ago, I believe on this show, we talked about how a year ago this was a disaster and they had to just cut loose and end it. And in just a few weeks, he becomes a main event player. And has a phenomenal match with Moxley at Double or Nothing, where he gets his real first shot at a main event spot and totally delivers. And then had a really good feud with Cody Rhodes. I'll never forget that. I think it was in July. Yeah, it was right after I moved to the new house. They had that Saturday Night Dynamite, and he squashed Cody Rhodes in 3 minutes to win the TNT title. And it was just such a surprise. And it really elevated the whole Dark Order. I mean, now they're one of the more successful acts in the company. They've got a cult following of their own. And, John Silver in particular I voted for him actually as my breakout star when we did our Fight Game year-end awards. I named John Silver the breakout star because of the work he done in BTE and the spotlight the Dark Order had. And that's all because of Brodie Lee, man.
Yeah, and it's going to be, going forward, it's going to be very hard for those. Well, I think they've already started it, but it's going to be very hard for those guys to not really receive kind of big pushes going forward, because the fans are going to get behind them. Especially
the days of them being a heel act on that show are over.
There's no way they can go back to it. I would almost suggest you just full force have Adam Page even join the group and just really make them a top level main event babyface group, because I think at this point you could easily do it and people would buy it right now.
I don't think you're wrong. So this whole couple weeks they've been doing this thing with Adam Page, and again, we didn't know what was going on with Brodie Lee. I just hey man, I've been advocating this. Hey, when people lose a title, write them off for a little while. Then when they come back, it feels bigger. So I thought that's what they were doing with Brodie Lee. And I'm like, we all thought, wow, it's been a while since he's been on the show. We had no idea. And they've been building up this thing with Page and Dark Order. And I thought, oh man, Page is going to get in and Brodie's going to come back and he's not going to like it. And that's not what it is. But I do think they will steer into this, and I do think you'll see that's the way they'll go. Because Adam Page does have really good charisma with all of them. Mm-hmm. So, or chemistry, I should say, with all of them. And I think that could work. And then it takes Page and puts him into a front position, a leadership position, which is something he's never really had. I think that would work. And again, as like we saw, John Silver did his best Cesaro babyface impression the other night when he went crazy. So it was just, I think it could work.
And it would be an interesting dynamic to see Adam Page with the Dark Order, with the eventual showdown with the Elite, Kenny Omega and the Bucks. Like that's an intriguing matchup right there. And it keeps Colt where he should be. Colt shouldn't be a leader of any group, but he's a great number 2 or number 3. So it just fits for Adam Page right now as well, even for his rise. It helps his rise as well as being a top babyface. So it just fits all the boxes for me.
It does. It really works. I really liked the show a lot. I think it was booked by an 8-year-old, and they went above and beyond to make the kid feel special. And I think that was the best thing they could have done. They went above and beyond to make Brodie Jr. happy. And you could just see on social media. I don't know if you saw it today, but I guess AEW had a New Year's party last night. And there was a bunch of videos floating around of Brodie just playing with the guys. Him and Ricky Starks were teaming up against Top Flight. And Top Flight is just bumping all around this. Have you seen this yet?
The only one I've seen is the one of him and Adam Cole.
That was great. I was going to get to that one next. He does one with Top Flight. And every time he touches the Top Flight guys, they're just bumping. And Jericho shows him and goes, "Man, why didn't you sell like that for me?" And I cracked up. I laughed my ass off at that point. But it's Brian Pillman just narrating it, and it's great. And again, he hits, I think it's Darius with the spinning lariat, and I was just like, oh man, like he just knew. And then you saw later Britt Baker filming with him and Adam Cole, and it just, again, man, just it's a tear. Like the way these guys are adopting that kid is phenomenal. Which is, to be frank, we did not see that as much with Brian Pillman Jr. when his dad died at a similar age. So it means a lot to see a guy like Pillman Jr. out there talking about how he wants to make sure the kid's going to be okay because he remembers what that's like. And it's just like, it's not bittersweet. It's just bitter, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's, again, it's just one of those that just kind of reminds you to, just take that extra minute, tell your family, always tell your family you love them every chance you get, because you never know, man. You just be thankful for the moment. So,
as the cliche goes, tomorrow is promised to no man.
Hey, that's a very real statement, and you never know what somebody's going through. I mean, nobody had any idea about this. Just again to the outside world. I know there was those select few, but nobody had any idea. So, tomorrow's not guaranteed, and you don't know what somebody's going through. So. Now to the other half of this, of the 2 count that we're going to spend on Brodie Lee, Bruce Mitchell, who has been let go by PW Torch, and I will say, I know a lot of people are giving them flack for posting the article. I'm not going to read the article or anything like that. You can find the article if you want to. I'm sure it's floating somewhere, but to take the article down, I think that. Because I understand what Wade Keller is saying as far as he put the article up and then he decided to take it down. And his statement was, Bruce has 30 years experience and he trusts what Bruce put, so he gave him the benefit of the doubt. And I get that. I understand you trusting your people. But he took it down, so I think they get a lot of respect for taking the article down, which in short, just was kind of questioning Brodie Lee's death as far as what the reasonings were, and really to an extent calling Brodie Lee's wife a liar, and which is just disgusting. And JD, what are your thoughts on Bruce Mitchell and his article on Brodie Lee?
So I saw this kind of evolve when our buddy Joey Garcia texted me when I was watching Soul on Christmas morning or Christmas night with my wife. He texted me, Brodie Lee, man. And I'm like, what about him? And he told me he died. And I jumped on Twitter and, figured everything out. And then one of the first people I saw tweet about it was Bruce Mitchell. And his initial comment was, if this is a COVID death, the wrestling industry needs to shut down immediately. First thing he said. And he's been kind of on that for a long time, that there should be no shows going on in the pandemic, which, I think that's a reasonable position to hold. Mm-hmm. But, so everything happens from here, it kind of goes out. A short time after that, Mrs. Amanda Huber puts on the internet that, Brodie died of a non-COVID lung issue, and it makes her statement on Instagram, really heartfelt, and I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of where I went. And the next day, Mitchell puts up his article, which Wade Keller says he didn't proofread, or didn't edit it. I'll tell you something, no shit. That is one of the worst written articles I've ever seen, just as far as like syntax and spelling. And like, it was clearly something that had not been written. It's kind of like stuff that I write before Justin Nipper gets a chance to edit my stuff at Fight Game. Editors are important. But you can tell this wasn't like he was referring to him as Lee the whole time. He didn't refer to him as John Huber, and he even misspelled Lee at one point. What bothered me about the article is that he talks about Brodie Lee, and then did you read the article, Scott? I think I sent it to you.
Yes, yeah, I did read it.
Okay. He spends half the article talking about COVID, and essentially says, we can't trust anybody in this. We have to remember how people acted during the Benoit thing, how everybody kept their mouth shut to make sure they had a job. And that's, say what you want about that. That's calling Amanda Huber a liar. Like, that's what that is. And I put it on our Fight Game Media Facebook group. And I said, this really makes me angry. And a lot of people disagreed with me at first. And they said, journalists have to ask the tough questions. Otherwise it's just PR. Remember, that was a comment. And I said, yes, you are correct. That is not what this is. Bruce Mitchell didn't ask a question. He pontificated a question and then answered it. Like, he made the decision. And again, I have a different view on this because I watched it kind of evolve from just his Twitter feed, like just seeing like where he was going. He already made up in his mind that this was a COVID death. And I think he still thinks it is. I think he truly thinks that Tony Khan is paying the family off to cover up that this is a COVID death. And I don't understand why he would do that. He would think that. But that's what he did. And we kind of argued back and forth on this, and I eventually got even Garrett was kind of like, yeah, you know what, you got a point. I wouldn't have let this article fly the way it is. And I'm like, yeah, man, totally. And I agree, asking the questions is important, but he doesn't do that. And then they were talking about something. I was like, oh, you know, Meltzer in the day would make phone calls and he would talk to coroners and he would do this. I'm like, yeah, man, that's the work. Bruce Mitchell did none of that. He did absolutely no work in putting this article together. He just made his case and called people out, and it bothered me. And then the next day when and what bothered me the most is he says in the article, as we know, the virus has already mutated to become more deadly. That's not true. There's not one bit of evidence that says the COVID virus has mutated and become more deadly. It's mutated and become more contagious. That doesn't necessarily mean more deadly. But again, that's making stuff up. Now, this is why quote-unquote dirt sheet writers get a bad reputation. And the next day, everything started changing, and then people kind of came over to, I don't want to say my side, but I think they kind of realized what had happened. Because I think a lot of people just assumed that Bruce Mitchell has 30 years under his belt, and he deserves the benefit of the doubt. And I did not say that. You know, I didn't think that at all. I think what he did was irresponsible.
Absolutely.
And then to go on and double down on it after Wade Keller took down the article, to double down is where I think he completely lost the plot. And that's where he lost even his most ardent defenders. Because Dave Meltzer and Sean Ross Sapp went out and put together stories and found out what happened. Bruce Mitchell didn't do that. He made his decision. And it was funny, because he always gets on Vince Russo for doing that. And like, going on in the end, he turned out to be just like Vince Russo. It's so bizarre and disappointing.
It's completely irresponsible. And when people, because he's an influential voice, and
yes,
you know, he's someone, and I saw someone say also on there, you know, Bruce Mitchell isn't, you know, he's always been about, you know, trying to represent the wrestlers and stuff. And, you know, this isn't the first time he's made some outlandish remarks that I just kind of eye rolled at. Like, I remember when New Day first started doing the pancake thing, you know, he questioned why they were doing pancakes and you know, was making it seem like he was almost, you know, saying it in a way that they shouldn't be doing that because of Black Sambo. Which I understand, but he was implying that they don't know who that was, or they wouldn't be doing it. And it's statements like that, you know, kind of, I'm almost not surprised that he would do this. Even it's completely irresponsible, but it doesn't surprise me. You know, he's said stuff like this before. You know, just irresponsible things like something like that. Like, those are three intelligent black men. They know exactly what they're doing, what their history is, what it means. So, and as far as this goes, what you said at the beginning of your statement, I think is very telling about the article and about what he was trying to do. It was poorly written. Plenty of grammatical errors. Like, there's no way that version of that quote unquote report, not even a report, but that's what he would call it.
It's an editorial.
That shouldn't have even made it to the website like that.
No.
You know what I mean? So I think what you said at the beginning of your entire thing is very telling about it, because how does that make it to the final station? You know, how does that get to the final post? Because it's rushed, and you could tell it's just not thought out.
So the way that happens is like, because I'm writing for a bunch of different websites now, I don't know the process that the Torch is, but I assume there's a word that they're operating on a WordPress site, which you save your column as a draft, and then someone with editorial administrational rights can come on and clean it up and do the post. My assumption is that Bruce Mitchell, having been there 30 years and being one of them until this weekend, was one of the most respected columnists in pro wrestling, probably had editorial administrative privileges, and so he was able to post his own article. But this is the reason why no one should have that. I mean, even like nobody should. Everybody, I'm of the mind that every writer should have an editor. I wrote a piece for Combat Republic past week about Wonder Woman, and how I thought that the success of Wonder Woman 1 led to a more disappointing Wonder Woman 2, because the more success you have, the less people above you are willing to say, hey, maybe no. And I think that everyone needs an editor. Everyone needs someone to go, maybe no.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't get that. The stuff you talked about with Bruce Mitchell is an early advocate of like civil rights in pro wrestling. He sees himself that way. I think he taught in Greensboro schools for years. I think he taught in a largely impoverished, largely African American community. So I think he feels connected. But I think he kind of oversteps. Like, Scott, I'm a white guy. I can't tell you how you should feel about something as a black guy. Mm-hmm. That is irresponsible on my part and foolish, quite frankly.
And I think that's where that's where the issue comes in, is that he doesn't understand that you can't, even me as a mixed person, the way I look, I can't tell, like, for example, my co-host, I can't tell him how he should feel just the way I look. You know what I mean? Like, you can't tell somebody of color how they should feel if you're not of color yourself. That's just my biggest thing.
I agree. He did it earlier. Was it a couple months ago with Keith Lee and his finish of the BBC? He was talking about how that was racist, and he was telling Keith, a 35-year-old man, this, and I was like, boy, you're really going against I remember thinking, boy, you're really going against the wrong dude here. And like, I think it's sometimes like older columnists, they slip into a generation and things change, and it's not the same,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they shouldn't be saying this, and it's okay to like lose your edge a little bit as long as you realize that. I mean, like, and here's the thing: we've all said and written stupid things, right? Like, mm-hmm. Especially on Twitter, where it's so easy to get caught up in discourse. And I can understand him saying if this was a COVID death, they should shut it down. You know what? Maybe there's an argument to that if it was, but it wasn't. And to double down when the widow says that, that's when it's like, all right, man, now you're too far.
It's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you going so hard like this about it? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Part of me understands a little bit, because we have seen so much. It's a carny business, and in a lot of ways it's changing, but in a lot of ways it still is. Right? It's a wrestling, like, to quote the great Aubrey Sitterson, wrestling is a business based on a con. And once you understand that everything is a con, you question everything. So I think a lot of the older generation really hammers that home. And they still think everyone's trying to work them over about something. Right? And again, the people are like, oh, you just trust everything anyone says to you. And I'm like, man, no, but. Like, if the wife says this is what it is, I'm not saying you can't.
You gotta go with that, man.
Well, part of me is like, okay, if you have questions, ask questions.
Yeah.
Don't just make accusations. And that's what bothered me the whole time, is that there were no people dog on Meltzer. He asked the questions. Sean Ross Sapp asked questions, right? Don't be in a rush to get to first, because that's how you get this like QAnon level stuff. Where nothing is real, and we're looking for pedophiles in the pizza section. Like, if we just assume everything in our minds is real, then you lose everything. And it's funny because Mitchell deletes his Twitter handle now because, people are coming after him and he doesn't like that. It's like, oh, but it was perfectly okay when you crapped on a widow and double down on it, triple down on it.
Right. And see, that's another thing. Like, you double down on it after everybody's telling you what it's not, and you're just like, this, it is what it is, and you're like, I put this out, I stand by it, and then you then you go and deactivate your Twitter. Like, I just don't get some of the moves that are made. Like, if you're gonna stand by something and then and then really stand your ground in it, you've got to hold your ground. Like, I would have a lot more respect for if you're just gonna hold your ground for it. Now it's just like, I don't even know if you really believe what you're putting, as much as I feel like now I almost want to say you're putting this stuff out just to get clicks and likes. I mean, that's how it comes off when you do all this just to deactivate your Twitter.
It's so weird because, like, you know, the older generation, the guys that have been writing since the 80s, like, they're not into it for the clicks normally. Like, they sell the new, like guys like Meltzer and them, they sell newsletters. Like, that's their business. It's not getting likes and clicks. But this, it just came off as so... Again, I get it. I understand the idea, and I support an idea of a journalist asking questions. That's what journalists should do. A journalist needs to say, is this real? But they need to say it after they've done the research. Like, you can ask the question, if you had written the same article and said, if this is, you know, in this climate, you know, is not obscene to, is this ask the question, is this related to COVID-19, and leave it at that, I would have been like, you know what, maybe not the time or place. But that would have been a different thing. The fact that he went out of his way to answer the question and vilify the people involved is where I think he went too far initially. And then he just kept going. You know?
And the timing, I mean, that should be... That shouldn't even been a question. Like, I don't even know... Like, there should have been at least a good couple days before you even think about putting an article like that out. Like, you're not even... Give the family time to grieve, and then, you know, the family, I'm sure they're getting probably messages about an article that they have no idea about. And that, to me, is just terrible.
That was the second post that Amanda Huber wrote, where she was very upset about it. And I get it. Here's the thing. And he's like, we need answers to these questions. And I'm like, all right, cool. Where's your outrage for Kevin Green? Kevin Green died 2 days before. Kevin Green was a linebacker for the Panthers, his team, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had a short career in WCW. Could have been a really good wrestler if he stuck with it. We still haven't heard his cause of death. It's been a week. Where's the outrage for Kevin Green?
There you go.
Like, these deaths are never immediate. Like, the fact that we had an answer from her that night was unexpected to me, and I'm kind of glad we did, because again, like, your brain fills in some of the dark aspects when you see these things and have. I understand asking questions. I had them too. We all should have questions. How does this happen? Mm-hmm. You know, and the fact that we got any kind of answers is amazing. I'm going to say this though: he was at the Mayo Clinic, and I'm not going to speculate too much, but people don't go to the Mayo Clinic for COVID. Like, if you know what the Mayo Clinic is known for treating, I'm going to leave it at that. And again, that's me speculating and probably being a little dangerous too. But I think the assumption when you hear Mayo Clinic should not be cover up COVID. You know, it's frustrating, man. It's frustrating. And I hate to see a guy squander a career. But at the same time, like you say, can't be surprised he's been going down this road for quite some time.
And, you know, and you're right. I will take back what I said, because you're right. A guy like that with that much, you know, history and mileage put in, he's not doing it for clicks and likes. It just
there's a lot of guys that are. You're not wrong.
Yeah, there are a lot, but not him though. I agree with you. Not him. I agree with you. But it just comes off like
it does.
What are you doing? Like, what are you trying to accomplish right now? And I get what you're saying. Like, you do have to ask questions, and they do have to be asked, but it's just like, I don't know if that's the hill you want to, I don't know if that's the hill I'm staking my flag on, you know? I don't know if that's the one.
There's a line between questions and accusations. He didn't ask questions, he made accusations. It's very different.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, like, we still don't, it's been, just over 13 years since Chris Benoit. We still don't really know what really happened. You know? Like, and autopsies are rare, and, like, if the family wanted it, maybe you get it, but I assume they know. Like, he was in the hospital for over a month. And, like, yeah, man, it's dark. Like I said, like, you didn't have to rush to be first. Like, sometimes you write something, it's best to just go to sleep. think on something. Or just say, you know what, man, I'm sorry. I got caught up in the moment. I was a little insensitive. I apologize. And you just lay low for a month.
And he's got the clout and the reputation where people will be like, hey, you know what? Okay, we got it.
Yeah, you're right.
You messed up. We got it's all good. Don't even worry about it. And nobody would have had an issue with that. And everybody would have moved on by now.
People would have moved on. People still would have been upset because there are people that will hold on to things, and that's fine. It's their prerogative to do that. But I mean, I'm a firm believer in everyone should get it. Just for things you say, everyone should have a chance to grow and learn. God, I know I have. I know attitudes and positions I had when I was younger have not aged well, and you got to sit there and say, hey man, I was very immature. I needed to grow up. I'm better today, and that's it. And just be sincere about it. It's not that hard.
No.
That doesn't happen sometimes.
No. And, it's, so that's the whole Bruce Mitchell situation. Two more things about the Brodie Lee, and then we'll take a commercial break and wrap up with some New Japan talk. How do you feel WWE did as far as handling the Brodie Lee, kind of tributes and the opening in memory of? I know a lot of people were a little disappointed, and some were upset at the lack of WWE's kind of tribute show or tributes to him, no video packages and whatnot, and especially after what AEW did. Where do you fall in that category?
It's hard. This is a tough thing. My opinions on WWE are always going to be colored by 30 years of preconceived notions of them. Right? I've been watching that company since I was a kid, and I have biases and thoughts and perceptions of them that are very difficult to overcome. Right? And you know this from our conversations. I very rarely give them the benefit of the doubt with anything. Mm-hmm. I'll admit that. Even, and again, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I think they're in a catch-22. They couldn't do... There's not much they could do. Actually, that's not true. They could do anything they wanted to do. Vince McMahon didn't really give a crap about AEW, other than they're now a rival promotion that he'll pretend is not a rival promotion. So if they wanted to do, if they wanted to put something, they could have. That being said, Brodie got a lot more love on the show from the wrestlers and the announcers and everybody else than the vast majority of pro wrestlers that have died while they were outside the company, while they were active and outside the company. Mm-hmm. Umaga didn't get anything like that when he died. I don't believe Test did either. You know what I'm saying? They got a graphic and that was pretty much it, which is what the vast majority of people who pass away do. If you made Vince money, you get a montage. Should they have done a montage for Harper, aka Brodie Lee? Yeah, probably. They did. They released one the next day with interviews from their guys. So they were putting it together. Some were they were giving AEW the chance to do it first. And I'm like, I don't know if I buy that.
I don't know if I give them
because
that
I don't think
much
Vince
credit.
McMahon is. Yeah, I've seen people say that though. People are like, I think they're letting AEW do it first. I'm like, you don't know Vince McMahon. You don't know Vince McMahon. Like I said, 30 years of business practice tell me that. Yeah, 30 years tells me that is not quite accurate. But I'm glad AEW had the chance to do it first because he was such a vital part of their company, and the guy, what's more important to me is how the company, companies are one thing, how people react to the same thing. And I think if WWE had done something, it would have felt very WWE, very sterile. And I think what AEW did was just better. So I think it worked out for the best. I really do. I really think that. I think the video they did put together was pretty good. Was it as good as the AEW one? No. Shouldn't have been, though, at the same time,
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. And, I think from here on out, regardless of who it is, we're not going to get a full-on tribute show unless it's we're not going to get a full-on tribute show until a week after a death. And they know exactly what happened after the Chris Benoit thing anyway, in my opinion. I don't see them doing that until they know all the information, just because they're like, we just can't, let that happen again. So that's partly why I think they won't ever do a full-on tribute show like that again to a deceased wrestler until they know exactly what happened. And there was a lot of mystery around his death in particular, so I think a lot of that played into why they didn't release that video package that they had as well. But also what you said, I don't think it would have been as good. And they did do a lot of tributes. Shad is probably the last, and he wasn't even an active guy in another company, but he's the last kind of young wrestler that passed. But we knew exactly what happened with him. We knew why he passed, so it was a little different with that. But I think that's a big part of why. I just don't think we'll ever get that after the Chris Benoit thing and how that just kind of blew up in their face. And I'm not comparing the two at all, but I just think that's why
unfair.
We'll never get it like that.
It's possible, but I don't know if it was their. I don't know if it was their place to really do that because, like, he is outside the company. He did leave them. He did, do his own thing and find. He did. I mean, for being a decade in WWE and in 7 months in AEW, I think he did find a better level of success in AEW. He was at the top right away and made an impact on their roster, kind of fulfilling the prophecy of, you can come to AEW and find yourself. He was a bright, shining example. He was the shining example of it, him and Moxley. So I do think AEW was the place for him to have that type of an event. And I don't know how I felt about it at the time, because I got both sides, and I get the people who are complaining that I will actually listen to are his friends, are the people in the business. And I hate to tell people how they should grieve, because part of the grieving process is anger. And WWE is the big faceless entity, even though they're not faceless, that's really easy to lash out against.
And you should be allowed to let that anger out. I agree.
Yeah. And it's not going to hurt. Lord knows it don't hurt Vince McMahon.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing does. So, I mean, like, yeah, and again, like, this was what AEW did felt right. And it was not with, like, if Luke Harper dies and he's still a WWE, roster member, they pay respects to him. They probably do the 10 bell. People are crying. They'll do a bunch of, homages and stuff like that. It'd be very similar to the Owen Hart show. Which you were probably too young. I don't think you were a fan yet. I remember the Owen Hart show. That was tough to watch.
The two I remember were the Benoit and the Eddie Guerrero one. The Benoit I remember very, very clear because
Me too.
I remember that one very clearly for some reason. Maybe it's because of what happened afterwards, but I remember that one very clearly.
I remember that one. So I remember watching because remember they had a Finger 11 song, do the highlights of Chris Benoit, and by the time they played it, we knew what happened, and it made it very hard to watch. So they handled that poorly, but at the same time, like, they didn't really know and they had to do something. So I can't fault WWE too much for the Benoit thing because that still plays off like just something too bizarre for words. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember the Owen Hart. This reminded me a lot of Owen Hart. The Owen Hart night. They had matches. Guys came to the ring in tears. It was very similar. They did like their thing, but I mean, that was really, it wasn't cathartic. It was more just suffering. It was just watching the guys suffer, watching the guys try to put together how their friend died in front of them. Right? It was a very different story, even though there's a lot of parallels. The AEW show, they really did try to celebrate the life of Brodie Lee with his family there, and everybody went out of their way to comfort Brodie Jr. So in my mind, it became, maybe this is just me, and seeing it, I was 16 or something when Owen Hart died, and I'm, older now. This show is more about making Brodie Lee Jr. feel better. And I think it made it play better, rather than watching the wrestlers grieve. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Did I ramble too much?
That makes a lot of sense. And I think the comparison is a good way to kind of give people something to kind of draw from it and see where you're coming from as someone who's seen both of them and seen all of the tribute shows they've had, but seen those two in particular. No, I think that made a lot of sense because you could tell how the show was laid out as well, that it was very much geared towards making sure that he knew how much, Brodie Lee meant to everybody, making sure he knew how much that they were going to, making sure he knew how much they cared about him. And it very much was it showed that as the show went on, and that what happened after the show as well with Tony and Cody was very good as well. So yeah, I agree with everything you said. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think Tony Khan, again, AEW's had, boy, we talked about how much luck they had in their first year and how they really didn't have any like horrible incidents happen to them. Well, they had a couple this year. We had the Matt Hardy concussion accident where I think a lot of people were scared to tell a beloved veteran, you have to stop. And I think they failed Matt Hardy that night. I mean, dude, I'm a big AEW fan, but I agree with that. They did not. The doctor should have stopped the match right there. Mm-hmm. That was a black mark. But I think they made up for it with how they handled it. Well, made up is a bad term. I think that the company grew and showed their corporate maturity, let's say, and how they handled Brodie Lee's death. So now they've actually handled some real adversity. That's something. This is something that even Vince McMahon didn't have to deal with until he was in the business near 20 years. With Owen Hart. I want to say Owen Hart died. Was the first active roster member that died while in WWE. I got to look that up to be sure, but I think he was.
And even if he's not, he's at the least the highest profile name.
Yes, definitely the highest profile name. I'm trying to remember my timeline correctly. Yeah, definitely the highest profile. Yeah, because everyone else was gone when they died. Yeah, definitely. And it was such a public tragedy with Owen Hart. So yeah, I give AEW a lot of credit. I think they scored a lot of points with the wrestling community and with wrestlers themselves when they just saw how the company handled it. So hopefully we have to see it again.
I agree. And they almost pulled in a million viewers, and I just think that shows just how much he was appreciated.
Not official.
Man. Well, not officially, but
not official Nielsen ratings, but yeah, according to the Pro Wrestling Torch. By the way, do you know who did not weigh in on the Bruce Mitchell thing? Wade Keller. That says a lot.
Now I don't listen to his show, so I don't know if he said anything about his show or not.
I do.
Oh, and he did not say anything.
Not a word. Wade is very different than like Meltzer. Wade has no problem not talking about stuff, and his very much, this is our business. We'll just keep it in here. So I think that's probably, especially because he's the one that fired him.
Yeah.
So kudos to him. But yeah,
Wade's a guy that I used to listen to his show all the time, and then the day I stopped was when he said something about Roman Reigns and like something about his cancer and how he criticized something about his like return from cancer speech, and I was just like, man, I can't. And that was the last time I listened to him. I haven't really listened to him in a while.
I don't listen to his review shows. I do listen to his his general talk shows. So I can't speak to that. But yeah, I enjoy his interview style. I really loved his interview with Moxley 2 years ago. So I typically I don't buy the torch, but I typically like what Wade Keller is saying. I think he handled this because he's in kind of a no-win situation too. I think he handled it as good as he could because he got pretty emotional talking about Brodie Lee on his show because Wade had lost his father 2 months ago.
Oh wow!
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, nobody did. Like he didn't talk about that, and he talked about it on his show, and it was just like, man, this year sucked. Like overall, it's been a shitty year.
Yeah, Deuce is 2020.
Yes, thank God it's gone.
Thank God that's gone.
Like, yeah, I mean, like, of course, 2021 could be horrendous, but I mean, who knows? At least we have hope as we're recording this on New Year's Day.
Yes, that's true.
Where were we? Oh yeah, we were talking about the show. Yeah, man, I think AEW did a good job handling it. I think WWE handled it as good as they could. Did they show the Brodie Lee video that they put together? The Luke Harper, I should say, video they put together on SmackDown tonight because I didn't watch.
I kind of fast forwarded because I always watch SmackDown a little late so I can skip the commercials and stuff I don't want to see.
That's smart, man.
I didn't see the video package, but I could have missed it. But no, I didn't see it. They'll probably show it next week. I would not be surprised to see them show it on Monday Night Raw.
If not, it's on their socials, and those tend to reach more people than the TV show anyway. So, right. I'm not gonna. It's hard. I don't like the company. It's hard for me to get on them, but I can't fault WWE too much because they're really in a no-win situation, and I think they realized it. So, I think the way everything worked out post tragedy went okay. You know,
and honestly, like, even though they should, like, 100% should, they don't have to do anything for him. Like,
No.
you know what I mean? Like, they don't have to do anything. They don't have to allow anybody to do anything. And again, they 100% should, but they don't have to do anything. So, yeah, I think what they did was good.
Let me tell you this. Brian Pillman died, right? They had his wife, they interviewed his wife on a live satellite feed. And if you have a chance to watch that sometime, it's pretty gross. Like, McMahon's basically accusing him of dying for a drug overdose on live television and not being the least bit sympathetic. Brian Jr. has expressed he does not care for World Wrestling Entertainment as an organization. And I think that's why, because they didn't do much to help the Pillman family. And Brian Pillman kind of was I think he was pretty much the first of that generation to die young, and then it became like a thing, you know? So I've seen it handled a lot worse. You know, when Dino Bravo got gunned down in a mob hit, they didn't say nothing about Dino Bravo when he died. Kerry Von Erich committed suicide in '93. I watched Raw that week. They didn't say nothing about Kerry Von Erich. You know what I'm saying? And this is in the '90s. Now it's more accepted that you do. In post Owen Hart, we accept that the company should do more. They used to do nothing.
Well, I think AEW's kind of set the precedent now. You know, it's a whole another. They've set the bar.
They really have. Hopefully, we don't have to see that bar ever get approached again. But I got even worse for you.
I agree.
Here's even worse. World Class Championship Wrestling. Gino Hernandez dies drug overdose. Right, that we thought took years to find out was a drug overdose under very mysterious circumstances. They worked it into an angle where Gino had blinded Chris Adams the week before.
Well, they haven't got. See, they have these. There's always worse. I mean, like, there's always worse,
especially in pro wrestling. Like, if you want to see how a company handles, you know, tragedy terribly, look no further than World Class Championship Wrestling. And they had a lot of deaths. 3 Von Erich deaths. Chris Adams is alive. Chris Adams is dead now, but he was alive at the time. Gino Hernandez, like, man, faking Fitz Von Erich having a heart attack, like. That promotion was disgusting. So it could be a lot worse.
Let's wrap up with this. What was your favorite Brodie Lee match from AEW?
Oh man, the dog collar match is great because, like, I think they aped the Piper Valentine one really well, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing a chain match with some blood, but that 3-minute squash on Cody, man, because it was so unexpected, and it really brought him into the forefront and, like, finally, like, living up to the potential. And he destroyed the old title belt and they debuted the new one. That's good stuff, man.
I almost wish they would have debuted that way. You know, I almost wish the Mox match would have happened maybe later down the road, and he would have just debuted with a match like that against Cody, and just because I agree that changed the landscape of the Dark Order, how people viewed Brodie, because Cody was protected to that point. So, yeah, I agree with that. Great call.
This is why you protect people, so that when you do beat them, it means something. Who knows what it would have been, because remember, he was going to debut in his hometown.
That's true.
And then the pandemic happened that week, and we got Matt Hardy and Brodie Lee debuting to an empty crowd in Jacksonville the next week. Like, he literally... I mean, talk about unlucky. Like, he literally debuted that way. Brodie Lee never wrestled for a real crowd in AEW.
Oh, wow. And wasn't it true that he held off his debut just so he could debut in front of his home crowd?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Terrible. But look at but I'm just like, it's easy to focus on the negative, but you look at what he did in his short time. Look at, like, who got over. Like I said, John Silver is a star now. Anna Jay is a wrestling prodigy who he kind of handpicked. He's like, that's the girl. That's who I want, you know? Like, he saw it. So, I mean, like, the man had a great eye for talent and knew what he could do and was so unselfish as a performer. So, I mean, he gave so much to that company. And it's what do you think about them giving Brodie Lee the actual title belt and retiring not the belt itself, but the design?
So I like it, and you know we talked about this as well. I like it on a few fronts. I think it's a really cool gesture, and I think it works as far as, Brodie Lee was a big part of making that title really feel main event and feel important. So I'm all for that. And I don't think it's a bad idea to change the way that belt looks. And it's still early enough in the belt, in the TNT lineage, to where you can still have a new look and nobody will mind. And I think this works. I really liked it. I thought it was a really cool gesture to have Brodie. And you know what? Since he's already signed to a contract, he has to debut with that belt. In 10, 12 years, whenever he debuts, he has to debut with that belt.
I've seen people be like, "Oh man, you can't push that on a kid right now." But everything I've seen of this child is him wrestling with these guys, and like having grown up in amateur wrestling, this is how it starts. Like you see it in the little kids right away. I'm not going to say the kid has to, but it would not surprise. It's not going to be a surprise at all if Brodie Lee Jr. shows up one day on Dynamite or whatever the show is called at that point with his dad's original TNT Championship belt. And that'll be a whole thing to talk about way down the line. But I think they did a good thing. Like, I think retiring the title with Brodie is a good move. I've never been crazy on the design, so I think this gives him a chance to kind of do something different with it. It should not look like this belt at all. It should look completely different.
I mean, why not just listen, the AEW Championship looks like the IWGP title. Just go ahead and take their IC title and go after that for your secondary belt.
Now you say that, and I'm gonna sit there and I'll tell you the Global Honored Crown title of Noah looks way more like the IWGP title than the AEW one does.
Does it?
But it's definitely inspired. What's
okay.
that?
I said, is it much more? Does it resemble it a lot more?
All right, give me a yes. This is gonna make great podcast material. I'm going to literally pull a picture and send it to you right now.
Perfect. Because the AEW title definitely has some resemblance. You could tell it definitely draws from the IWGP title.
It's always, I think Cody said it's like a mixture of the IWGP and the Big Gold Belt, which I think is what they were going for.
And the Big Gold Belt's a classic as well. That's a good title as well.
And if that's what they were going for, yeah, clearly that works just fine. But yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, like I like my pro wrestling belts looking like pro wrestling belts. I literally sent you I literally just put it in your Twitter DMs what the Noah belt looks like. So take a look at that real quick.
Oh, that centerpiece is much closer to the IWGP title than AEW.
That's what I'm saying. And I like Noah, but in 2019 they said, "Hey, let's just do everything New Japan does."
Yeah, that's much closer to a New Japan belt than the AEW one is.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm not gonna get on AEW too bad.
I'll take back what I said. They definitely are. That's definitely an original looking belt AEW has compared to this. Okay, good call. And I will say AEW definitely to me has the second best looking heavyweight title
behind IWGP. IWGP is a great looking belt right now.
I love the names on them. That to me that puts it over the top.
It's like the Stanley Cup.
Yes.
Yeah. It's again, that's part of that New Japan sports thing. They aren't the first ones to do that. You know what the first company was to do that, Scott?
Who was it?
WWF.
Really?
Hogan 84 belt had the names of everybody on it.
See, that's a great tradition. That's something that they could bring back, and people would think that was cool. People would like little things like that. That's something they should do.
Yeah, they can't. I mean, do you know how many times that belt changed hands in the 90s?
Yeah, that's true, and especially nowadays, it would change too many times now too.
I mean, actually, it's been much better than it was then. Like in the trust me, in the Attitude Era, that thing was going all over the place all the time. I am going to send you now we're doing this. I'm going to send you a picture of what the Hogan 84 looked like. This is the title that Backlund lost to the Sheik, that Hogan won from him. I think it was 3 weeks later. So it's Hogan. Actually, it's funny. Hogan's first reign on top, he has a new belt every year.
Now that's pretty cool.
Yeah, again, they didn't do it for anybody else. But during his first reign as champ, he has 5 different belts. I just sent that over to you.
5 different belts.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't like the green, but
it's
I do like the plates. I think the plates are very cool. See, I like that. I like being able to see the former champions and how long. I like that. That's cool.
And then there's Hogan 85.
So that strap must be huge because that's double.
It was
plated.
enormous. It's absolutely enormous. When he wins that title, it's It's almost as bad as the AWA World title at that time, which was also obscenely large and obscenely ugly. So, like, this is 84, 85s when belts start looking better. And I just sent you the Hogan 85, which is similar. And, like, they also have the names on it, but the design is a little cleaner. So check that out.
Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, now see this, I like the black. The
Yeah, it looks
black
good.
is very nice. I like that.
But you know what it is? It's the exact same design as the NWA TV title.
See, I do see that. Okay.
The NWA TV title's red. That's the only difference between the two belts. It's really
Now
crazy.
let me ask you: does the TV title have the plates with the names on it as well?
No, the TV title. Oh, dude, now we're getting into some of my favorite conversations. And check this out, NWA TV title. Google is amazing. How quickly you can pull this crap up.
I do like this black though. The black looks good. I like that. Just the plain black and silver. That looks good.
It's a slick looking belt.
Yeah, I like.
Like that might be my favorite until honestly, because I grew up with it. I love the winged eagle, like the traditional, what's considered the WWF belt from my era. Like that's my favorite. But I think all the ones they have. So here I'm just popping it into the chat right now.
Hey, you know what? This might not be a bad one for them to take after for their new TNT title. I mean, obviously they took after the TV title with the red and whatnot.
And I just sent you the TV title, so you compare the two and check out what the TV title had on its side plates. What it still does. This is still what the NWA TV title looks like.
I like the CBS and the ABC.
The
plate. I like
legally.
I like that.
I don't know how they got away with it, but
yeah, both of those together.
Because if you click on it too, you can see the NBC one, and I'm not sure who's on the. I'm sure if I dug a little deeper, I can find who's on the side next to CBS. But I mean, that's a good looking belt.
Yeah, why wouldn't they try to like emulate that more closely? Like I like that a lot better. I like the black strap instead of that red strap. Maybe that's just me too, though. But I like that
I didn't
black
even notice.
strap.
I didn't even notice it. Yeah, I must have picked a replica belt instead of an actual one.
Oh, so it is supposed to be the red.
Yeah, the actual belt has a red strap on it.
I like the black, man.
Doesn't it look good?
It does look good. I like the black with the red, white, and blue. That looks good. Or the silver, red, and blue.
I'm going to slide this particular belt in Tony Khan's DMs and be like, hey, man, when considering redesigns.
You can't. Man, you should. Especially for Darby.
It would look great for him.
The black would look great for Darby.
Yeah, Yes, I was joking about the DM saying I'm sure his aren't open, but I can surely tag him on. I know he looks at these things, so I think that would look good.
He's definitely on his Twitter all the time.
Oh, for sure.
He's definitely on his Twitter all the time.
The reason they can't ape the NWA TV title because that belt is still in existence. NWA as their TV title, this design. Like, because remember, Billy Corgan brought back the old designs, and they were using this specific design. Because this is, I like to call this the Arn Anderson title. Right, this is the one that Arn and Dusty Rhodes feuded over, and it's a slick looking belt, man. Like in the '80s, no one else had a belt that looked quite like that with the red. So I mean, it stuck out in the era. Nowadays, everything's colored, so it doesn't quite have the same effect. But this is probably my favorite NWA belt. Actually, you know what? I take that back. Now I'm having fun doing this.
At least it's not maroon like the North American title. I hate the maroon color. That's just terrible.
Do you know what that belt? That belt is actually the identical to the original WWF World title.
Oh, I hate that. That color strap is just god awful.
It's hideous. It's absolutely hideous. That actually looks identical to the belt that Bruno Sammartino won when he beat Buddy Rogers.
Huh.
So here's my favorite NWA belt just before, and then I'll show you the original WWF belt, WWF. Check your DMs real quick.
Oh, I like that United States title.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's like the one Lex Luger had it forever. Like that's the one that I always think of as like the Luger belt.
I might like this one better than the old WCW one. That one's a good looking belt too.
That was a good. I always thought that belt looked too much like the Intercontinental title of the same era. So this one I liked a little bit more because it was unique at the time. Like the circle side plates, you didn't see that very often.
Yeah, I like this one. This one looks good.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that design. It's a favorite of mine. That is literally, like I said, that was the one that you saw Luger
I need to remember to put all these pictures when I post this show, to put all the pictures of all these different belts so everyone can see what we're talking about.
Yes. I mean, like, if you have the time, look this stuff up. But yeah, Scott will put this in the
these
in the show notes. Oh, it's a GIF. No wonder I didn't save. I'm trying to find the original. Here we go. This is it.
You know, Going Broadway podcast, I follow them on Facebook. They're always doing belt giveaways and stuff, so they always have belts like this that they're doing raffles for. I'm not
a Joe Lanza belt mutant, as he likes to call them, but I do appreciate looking at an old title belt. Like, there's something pretty cool about them.
Yeah.
Like, just looking at the old belts. So here, I'm about to tell you, this is the original, the one I just sent you, is the original WWF World Heavyweight title, which was also the Buddy Rogers version of the U.S. title.
Oh, my goodness.
That was being defended.
That looks like a Julius Caesar belt.
Right? Like, it's crazy how far belts came in like 15, 20 years. Like, but doesn't that look like the NWA's national title?
Unfortunately, I think that one looks better than the NWA title.
Yeah, the NWA one's pretty fucking. I can't.
The North American title.
I can't dispute that.
I don't mind that centerpiece. To be honest with you, like, if you put that on an actual belt, I wouldn't mind that centerpiece.
I think now that I'm looking at this again, I think if you redesign this with a modern eye, it might not be too shabby. You know, there's that
strap just looks flimsy and just put together, but that centerpiece isn't bad.
Yeah, it's not. It's really, it's actually kind of warmed on me. But again, of all these, like, I love talking about title belts. Like,
I can tell, and this is cool. I really, so out of all these you've shown me so far, out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 belts, out of these, man, that United States title looks good.
Isn't that good looking?
Yeah,
especially
the US belt looks good.
Especially in the era. Like, that was this is like the US title when Ric Flair was walking around with the big gold, and when the other guy, the same era as that TV title above it. Like, again, that's the one that Lex Luger held the US title on and off from 87 to 91. So it's really, I think of it as the Luger title, but it's also, I think Stan Hansen held it. I think Michael Hayes held it briefly. Barry Windham held it. But yeah, it's pretty much the Luger belt. And then immediately when WCW becomes the name of the company as opposed to the name of the show, all their belts get changed, and then you bring in the one the more what's traditionally thought of as the WCW US title belt.
Yeah, this has got to be the direction we Tony Khan goes in the next TNT title, because I think this is great. This is fantastic, especially if you're going old school. This is a great way to go.
I love the look of the old school belts, man. I really do. Like, at some point, someone decided the title belt should look like championship rings, and it's okay. It made it unique for the era, but I just don't think it looks as good. Like, yeah, that's personal opinion.
No, and there's something to that. Like, I do think there is something to having the blinged out title, but there is something to having a traditional old school looking title. I think you need a little bit of a mix. You need a little bit of both, to kind of balance each other out.
And that's what I think New Japan does so well, is their belts do have a timeless, classy look, but they look like title belts.
Yeah, it's gonna be they struck gold with their belt, because it looks like it can work old school. It's definitely good enough to look new school, and they've struck gold with that one. Definitely the best looking belt in the game, and I don't see that changing. If AEW couldn't top it with their belt, I don't see anybody topping New Japan's for a while. No,
IWGP is the gold standard of championship titles in this era. And it wasn't always. Like, some of the older designs weren't quite as slick looking as the current one. See, now you got me doing this before you transition. now I got it. Now, Scott, damn you. Now I gotta show off what the belts used to look like.
I don't know if this is gonna be good or bad. I feel like it's not gonna look as good as some of these older belts.
Oh, it's different. It's different. So let's do this one first. For the record, I'm showing him the IWGP title that was held before, that guys like Tanahashi and Brock Lesnar, or I should say Nakamura and Brock Lesnar held. Oh, darn it. Why do people say things as WEP files? You cannot save a WEP file. Bastards.
It's still crazy to think that Brock Lesnar was in New Japan wrestling Shinsuke Nakamura.
Brock Lesnar was the New Japan IWGP champion at probably the worst period in the company's history. Because this, you're talking about like the height of Inokiism, when Antonio Inoki lost his damn mind and thought that pro wrestling should be, what do you call it, mixed martial arts. And he was making his guys face MMA guys in fights, and they were getting their asses kicked. And like he was pushing all these MMA guys who were terrible pro wrestlers,
like the Bob Sapps.
Bob Sapp's not that case, actually. Bob Sapp was super over, and Bob Sapp was a star. So he's like an exception, but yeah, he wasn't as far as like a traditional pro wrestler goes. Yeah, but there's something different. There's something about Bob Sapp that actually worked in that era. But I mean, like guys like Naya Ogawa, that's one. Like, and then you got guys like Brock Lesnar. I think Josh Barnett was an NWA or was an IWGP champion. Like, it's not what it was, because at the same time you have like Misawa and Muto in All Japan and Noah at the time. So it really wasn't quite working, but they redirected. So the one I just sent you is the early 90s Oof. New Japan one. This is one held by like Keiji Muto and Chono and those guys. And this is the one that like Lesnar and Kurt Angle held.
That first one is rough.
Yeah, it's not my favorite belt design at all.
That looks like that is not okay. Now this second one is okay. It's
it's all right.
We're getting there. Now see, that to me looks more like a light heavyweight championship.
I can see that.
It doesn't scream It doesn't scream the big gold heavyweight title. That looks like a light heavyweight title to me.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see where you're coming from. Oh yeah, I forgot about this one.
And you know what? I think that's why I was never a big fan of the undisputed WWE title.
Oh, I like that belt. That was I hated the one that replaced the Winged Eagle. So that was like I like that one better.
I feel like your main belt's got to have some size to it. It's got to be big. You know, it's got to cover like their midsection, their whole midsection. I can't
fault your logic there.
Or at least when it's on their shoulder, you know, like you see the big centerpiece is just covering their entire chest.
I think this was late 90s, early 2000s. Oof. IWGP World Title.
Oof.
This was the worst one.
Oh my gosh, this looks like a headband.
It's like a crown. This is for people listening I'm showing them the crown title. I think this is the one that Hashimoto held, and yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, I definitely got to put these. I'm definitely going to put these with the show notes, because some of these, you got to see these IWGP titles to see where they've come from, to see the greatness that they have, to see where they started. Definitely really started from the bottom type story.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I like the circular one. That one is not bad. The second one, like I said, the Lesnar title, the one that I think was also the Genome title, was all right. The current one is the best. The Okada Tanahashi belt is like the best title in pro wrestling,
hands down, no question. And it's even. I think I even have a larger respect for it, seeing where it came from.
Yeah, the story of New Japan is so interesting, and I'm gonna talk about this in another article about how, and we've been doing this a little bit on the High Tension podcast with my buddy Justin Nipper on the Fight Game Patreon network. And we talked a little bit about the history of New Japan. And we were talking about how Riki Dozan's version of pro wrestling that starts in Japan splinters immediately after his death. And Giant Baba creates All Japan that was very NWA wrestling influenced, very Western influenced pro wrestling, like traditional pro wrestling, like the Misawa match we watched last year. Mm-hmm. And then Inoki does, like, people don't know what strong style really is. Strong style was supposed to be more influenced by kicks and strikes and more martial arts influenced. So this is like kind of the stuff Inoki was into. Inoki fought Ali in that horrendous proto MMA bout. So I mean, Inoki was definitely more interested in like the combat aspect, where Baba was more interested in the I don't want to say theatrics, but like the working aspect of pro wrestling. So this is why in Japan they're not threatened by the idea of that pro wrestling can be something different. Because all the major companies in Japan have their own flair, whereas you don't really see that here. Here pro wrestling kind of is pro wrestling.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And when you do see a crossover, it's definitely a pro wrestling crossover. It's not a hybrid. type thing.
Yes.
It's definitely one or the other. It's usually the other.
Yeah, so I'm going to save that topic of conversation for a week or so down the line when I have another article coming out. So remind me about that. So when we talk about New Japan, hopefully we have a show this week.
I hope so.
The city of Tokyo has asked the government to grant a state of emergency. Just today,
wow.
before we started the show, which is funny because All Japan just wrapped up its first show of the year, so they're trying to get it in under the wire. And hopefully New Japan has been restricted to only 5,000 people in the Tokyo Dome, which is going to look crazy. Like 5,000 people in the Tokyo Dome that's like spitting in the ocean. So it's going to be weird to see.
I'm sure they're going to have it like tarped off and stuff. Like they're going to have to have it like now. Well, I was going to say, are they going to like kind of put them all on one side to make it seem more full? But that would defeat the whole purpose of it. So I guess they're not going to do that. Scott,
I have no idea. I mean, I'm sure they have a plan, but like they have not expressed what that plan is. Like I don't know. Like I said, I watched the big Dragon Gate show from 2 weeks ago, and they had they packed I think it was Fukuoka. They packed the hall in Fukuoka, but everybody was masked. Now cases in Tokyo are on the rise. They're nothing compared to America, but they're trying to take this stuff seriously. Like we're definitely at a darkest before the dawn moment with where the virus is and where vaccines are. So I hope we can get a show in this week.
Yeah, and you know what? If we can't, and if they need to push it back, then we need to push it back because, at this point, it's let's go long. Let's think long term, and if we need to push it back, that's fine. But yeah, I hope we get a show too. I mean, at this point, we're at the finish line. We're right here. So I hope we can at least get this show in, because there's a lot of things that could be happening. There's a lot of big implications that could be happening, and in Gato we trust, or at least for now.
For now,
for now.
Wrestle Kingdom does the best job of any promotion of being like the season finale, right? WrestleMania does a decent job of it too, but I think Wrestle Kingdom really, everything kind of culminates in that show, and then you get to New Year's Dash, everything starts over. Like literally the next day. Like I look back on the best example of this is Wrestle Kingdom 2016. I forget the number. It's 5 years ago. I forget the this is 15, so that was 10. You have that great match between AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura for the Intercontinental title. And the day before the show, it gets announced that they're going to WWE. Geez, talking about the past. And so on the very next show, right, they do the swan song for AJ and the Bullet Club. Kenny Omega puts AJ on his shoulders and then drops him with the one-winged angel. Right, and so Kenny Omega goes from being the junior, the El Phantasmo of that era of the Bullet Club, and gets pushed to be Kenny Omega. Like, Gato is so good at just moving the pieces around.
Well, I think he's going to have to. I think he's going to have to do some moving around this year.
Well, I think they've been doing an interesting job of moving the pieces into place, because right now we have this, like, in WWE they would just do a triangle match or a three-way match, whatever they call them, I forget. They've done the two separate matches for the two separate nights. So, in my mind, what you're going to see is Kota Ibushi overcome Naito and overcome Jay White, because that's the story they've been building since 2017, 2018. Yeah, I forget. No, 2017. They've been building this story with Ibushi since 2017. So, that seems to be where it's culminating. And you'd say in the undercard, you've got Okada and Ospreay, which is building to be a feud for the generation, like you're starting the new unit, and it's big. Like Okada's in a position now where if you beat Okada, Ospreay's pretty much made, but I mean, if he beats Okada, he is made.
And it seems like this is going to be what takes Ospreay, and they're going to try to make him the Kenny Omega level without the title.
I think so. I think that's the trajectory that they're on with Ospreay, because it's very similar. Like Kenny Omega went from being a New Japan junior to the IWGP champion in like 2 years. So I don't see why they can't do the same thing with Will Ospreay. But at the same time, you got Jay White on that same trajectory. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen because, like, you don't want Will Ospreay and Jay White both occupying that top foreign heel spot. So what changes? And I imagine something will change very soon.
And, it's something that we've talked about, kind of how Jay White's been interacting with Kota Ibushi. I would not be surprised to see a Jay White face turn here in 2021. Because I think Will Ospreay is definitely going to be the top heel coming. But I'm not saying Jay White should be a face, but I think we got a face run coming from Jay White in 2021.
It's possible. Jay White is one of the best heels in professional wrestling. Like, I
agree.
America, Japan, Europe. Like, Jay White is so good at getting under people's skin. Like, that is a guy that I don't know if he wants to, but I could see him succeeding in WWE because, like, he's so good at being a smarmy heel, Mm-hmm. So I could see him going there and it working. So, but I don't think New Japan's gonna want to ever let that guy go. They trained him, he's their guy. So I don't know. Like, it's too early to turn Ospreay back, and Will's kind of unlikable anyway. So do they turn? I mean, like, I don't know. Like, New Japan there are no real baby faces and heels. Like, everyone kind of exists in the gray in New Japan, with the exception of Tanahashi. You just can't boo him. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's very interesting. Like, is Empire going to usurp Bullet Club's role as the foreign heel squad? Hard to say, man. Very hard to say.
Because you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. Even when Will Ospreay was a babyface, and I'm glad you said that, he was never the most likable guy. He was just really good. And you were like, wow, he's really good. He was never the most... And I don't even think Kenny... And I thought the same about Kenny Omega. Like, they're not the most likable people, but they're just really good.
Kenny is like a savant, where Kenny is just weird. Like, Kenny's just like that Utaka gamer gimmick is not really a gimmick. Like, it's pretty much him. So, I mean, but there's like a weirdness to Kenny Omega, like this eccentricity to him that's very appealing, that I think is actually more appealing in Japan than it is here. Because it's more, I think he's more culturally related to them than he is his own people. As actually own people, it's like he's from a different planet than Canadians or people from North America. But Will Ospreay is just kind of a dick.
Yeah, he's an arrogant little prick.
Yeah, like, even as a babyface, you're like, God, he's a dick. Like,
I used to love when he fight Okada because I knew Okada was going to give it to him.
Mm-hmm. Like, again, like last year, he had that great match with Hiromu. Ain't nobody booing Hiromu. No. No. So, I mean, the writing's been on the wall for this for a while, and I think they were steering into what Will Ospreay was meant to do. Like, I think, I say this, I mean this as, like, level of what I think of the character. I think he could be the Shawn Michaels of New Japan. And when I say Shawn Michaels, in my mind, Shawn Michaels is always that early, late 90s version of the character, the more effective early Shawn Michaels. In my opinion, Shawn Michaels was always better as a heel than as a babyface. Now maybe I'm on an island with this, and I probably am, but I always thought heel Shawn Michaels was the more effective Shawn Michaels. And I absolutely think that Will Ospreay could find his own version of that.
Well, this is he's going to get his opportunity this year. He's being primed for it, and that's I mean, how you want to do this, JD? Do you just want to kind of go through the card, or you just want to kind of ramble on? Let's
ramble. Let's talk about it. I mean, like, everyone else is going to do a match by match preview. It's a 2-night show. I don't know how many I don't know. Like, I don't want to do that because we've been going for a while anyway. I'd rather just kind of talk about what you want to see, because there's stuff on this card I want to see, and there's stuff I don't want to see. I'll tell you what wasn't a match a week ago that is now a match that I really want to see, and that's Kenta versus Kojima.
And this is kind of a last-minute put-together match as well.
It is. Juice Robinson broke his orbital bone, and so he can't go. So they went to the bench, and they called out Satoshi Kojima, and I don't know, I stumbled over his name last time. I don't know if you just got into New Japan over the last 5 years, you probably don't appreciate Kojima for what he was. Kojima headlined WrestleKingdom 10 years ago against Tanahashi. Headlined. He's one of the few guys to hold both the IWGP and All Japan World titles. I believe he did it at the same time. That's like being the AEW and WWE champion at the same time. Like when Chris Jericho had the WWF and WCW world titles at the same time. That's what Satoshi Kojima did. Like, Kojima is awesome, and he's 50, but he could still freaking go. But New Japan just kind of does that. Like, when you get old, they push you down the card. If you want to get pushed, you go over to Noah. They treat old guys well. So I'm super excited to see Kenta and Kojima. It's a match that if you announced it 10 years ago, people were like, whoa! And now it's like, maybe it's not going to be what it once was, but I think it's still going to be pretty damn good.
Okay. And I know you've mentioned that you think there's an opportunity for Moxley to show up and make a challenge for night 2.
No.
Do you still...
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, he's here.
All right, so that's done.
My source has told me that Moxley didn't want to travel with his wife being pregnant.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, it does make sense. It disappoints me, but I get it. I can't fault the man. Plus, he was on AEW TV this week, so I know for a fact he could go.
Okay. So a match that kind of has me intrigued is the tag title match because, as we've talked about, it seems like now that Toma and Tonga seems like they're going to be the baby faces in this match. Even I know they play in the shades of gray, but it seems like Tai Chi and Zack Sabre, I haven't seen all their matches, but I've seen a couple of them. They seem to have gelled pretty well as far as a tag team.
So this is what I wrote about for Voices of Wrestling, the New Japan book. I wrote about the tag team situation this year. And the Dangerous Techers, old Zack Sabre and Tai Chi, they've been the team of the year in New Japan, but they've been kind of leaning babyface. Suzuki Gun is kind of, again, everyone in New Japan kind of exists in the state of gray, so it's hard to know what they're going to do. But yeah, it's weird. It does seem more like, the Gorillas are kind of more baby faces. That the whole opinion point I wrote in my opinion piece was that this is the role of Tama Tonga and Tangaloa, is they're the tag team champions. Eventually, the Bullet Club tag team will get those belts back. It's what they did with Anderson and Gallows, and when Anderson and Gallows left, God stepped up into that role, and that's just kind of what Gato does. So if I could mortgage my house on a bet on the God, I would.
And I think Tama is. I think he can cut a really good babyface promo as far as being fired up.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's Japan, though.
Yeah, that's true.
It's Japan. It's different.
It's true.
To cut that super babyface promo, there's always exceptions to the rule, but it always helps if you can do it in Japanese, which is why Kenny made a pretty good babyface there toward the end, because Kenny could do it in Japanese. Moxley was an exception. When Moxley cut some of his in-ring promo, like it's just in Japan, like you close the show, you win, you cut a promo. Moxley's against Tomohiro Ishii was great, and the crowd ate it up, even though it was in English. So I think that you're correct, but I think that it matters less. Like if he's in the States, yeah, it matters big. In New Japan with the tag belts, doesn't matter as much. But I do like Tama Tonga.
No, I everything you said is right, and I guess it's more so me looking forward to the post-match scrums that they do afterwards, which are always probably some of the highlights of all their shows. I
agree, man. That's one thing that makes New Japan special and different from wrestling here in the States is those post-match scrums. I know AEW was trying to embrace that a little bit more pre-pandemic, but the pandemic kind of closed that down. I hope they do it again when we find the new normal. But yeah, I adore when the guys cut the press conference promos in New Japan. It's the best.
Yeah, I agree with that. So let's talk about the big one, the big double main event, the 2-night main event that will involve the double title, the Intercontinental and the IWGP title, double title match. Naito and Ibushi, night 1. Jay White waits the winner in night 2. And you have already stated that you believe that Kota Ibushi will become God by the end of this.
Kota Ibushi will become God, not a God. The God. It's something you could not do in the United States.
That's something you could not do or promote or put on a T-shirt like he has.
Yes, he's got a shirt saying he is God. That's very different in Japan than it is here. It's crazy.
Yeah, that would not fly here. He would be a heel if he were to do that here in the States.
Yes. Like when Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon made Shawn Michaels' team.
Oh, my God. That was the worst. And they gave him an entrance.
I know. I know. This is people like, why are you so hard on WWE? And I just there's moments I point to. I'm like, they booked God in the match, right? And they didn't have God go over.
I had God lose.
God do the job to Vince McMahon. I mean, like, if that don't say something about a human being, I don't know what does.
Oh, man. And you know what? And Shawn Michaels ought to be ashamed of himself, too, for even agreeing to that match. Because he got enough clout to be like, hey, look, we don't have to do this. We could do a handicap match.
Which it was.
But that's how it should have been billed. It could have been billed like that.
Shawn Michaels teams with God.
Right.
This is why I stopped watching wrestling for a long time. Stuff like that. But yeah.
Oh, man. So
that's what I'm saying. Here it's tasteless. In Japan, we're like, man, Kota Ibushi's going to become God. And we're just like,
yeah, it's a normal thing. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
Oh, Kota's going to be God now. Cool.
You know, I think he gets halfway through. I think he beats Naito, but I think Jay White leaves night 2 as the double champion.
Man, if Dusty Rhodes or Kevin Sullivan is taking the book in New Japan, that's exactly what happens.
I think that's what happens, man. I think that's why we've been seeing the Jay White kind of talking to him and the little post match things they've been doing. I think he holds that win over Ibushi for another year. And next year we might get he might get his win back, but I think Jay White leaves night 2 as double champion.
I don't because, man, if it was 1984 and this was Crockett or Florida, yes, that's exactly how it would end. I don't think they're going to do that here because it's Wrestle Kingdom and because they've been building the story. Like, do they want to stretch out another year with Ibushi? Like I said, they've been building this since 2017. So, I don't know. That being said, I could see Jay White taking it from him later on at like Wrestling Dontaku or something like that, or if the states do open up, maybe Wrestle Kingdom at Madison Square Garden. I could see that, but I mean, like, I don't think I hope they don't do it. I hope this is just the culmination of Kota Ibushi becoming the man, because he's never really gotten to be the man yet, and I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like, Gato's been a little surprising to me this year with his choices. So maybe I don't know.
I know you can't push everybody, and I get that, but they have guys that you're like, man, how are they not champion? But then you're like, well, you got this guy and you got this guy. It's like, Kota Ibushi's a shoo-in, but then you're like, but Jay White has just been on fire, and it's like, but Naito is still Naito. He's still one of the best guys in the world, and then, eventually you're going to have Will Ospreay in the mix. Okada can only be out of the title picture so long. Like, this is a good problem to have.
It is. I compare him to WWE as far as an embarrassment of riches, because WWE just has so much talent in its roster. It's ridiculous. People forget like how much quality talent, how many guys could be main eventers in other places that are in that company.
But they got Swerve Scott sitting in the mid card of NXT, and that guy is a beast. I love that guy, man.
Don't get me started on that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, New Japan's similar. Like, you're right. Okada, Ospreay could be the main event, but it isn't. It's like fourth. Third. It's really third. But it could be.
It very easily could be. Like, it would not surprise anybody if that is the main event of next year's Wrestle Kingdom for the title. Nobody would be surprised.
Evil was the champion for a decent chunk of 2020. Sonata got to the G1 finals. They're in like the 6th most important match this year.
That's another guy who people, and I'm one of them who's like, yo, so when are we gonna get when is Sonata gonna get that shot? Like, that's another guy.
When Sonata starts showing some more personality.
Okay.
Like, that's a personal opinion. Like, I love Sonata's work rate because he's young Keiji Muto, and that's my all-time favorite. I'm a Muta guy till I die. Like, he wrestles exactly like Muta, but he doesn't have Muta's charisma. That's what I think holds him back.
See, this is where I almost feel like it's got to be getting close to time to split those two belts up, because you can have two legit main event title belts right there.
Yeah.
You know, and,
Which I think,
and I think it'd be good, and that's good because you might be onto something with Sonata, and that could be good for bringing that personality out of Sonata, holding that title or going after that title instead of it being the only main program.
So what I think is going to happen is because the double titles thing was Naito's story, right? Yep. Naito wanted both those belts. Once Naito is out of the scene, I think they should do the Keith Lee and strip the IC belt, and then do something, tournament, whatever. They'll think of something creative for it. And again, New Japan, much like we've seen with AEW, books their secondary title as a main event level title. So who does it go to after that? Logic says Jay White. Logic also tells me it could be Will Ospreay. Logic also says, well, Nakamura got that belt after he had his IWGP bronze. Maybe they put it on Okada. Like that it's so weird because they've had both their U.S., which again is a really important title in New Japan, and that Intercontinental title kind of on the shelf all year. Now is the time after this show to reestablish the Intercontinental Championship. And any of those guys could be good. Any of them.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and I think whenever you do, because I think it's a foregone. Well, maybe not so much since the pregnancy, but I was going to say I think it's a foregone conclusion. Mox will be back, and he automatically elevates that title, the U.S. title, which he will be going for. Yeah. But when is he going to come back? With Renee being pregnant and whatnot, so that kind of changes things too. But
Gedo, there's a plan, because they stripped him the last time when he couldn't come and defend it against Juice last summer. They stripped him because they wanted to get it on Archer, right? So why haven't they stripped Moxley unless he has a plan? They're going to do something with Moxley. And Moxley's had a complicated year between being the AEW champion and the COVID, and now with Renee being pregnant. It's made things difficult. But clearly Gedo has something. Or else they just take the title off him and give it to Kenta. Because Kenta says, I've defended the briefcase more than Moxley's defended the title. And
he's on to something.
He's not wrong. Boy, Kenta's a hell of a promo. Who knew? That was never Kenta's thing. But boy, since coming to New Japan, he has really found himself as a promo.
And you know what? You've brought this up before, and I've said this I've started saying this to people since you've said it. When and I think now it's starting to become more so with AEW since they're really since they are a major promotion and they are on national television every week. There is something to rubbing shoulders and just working with guys who have just been in front of the camera and are talkers and can talk in front of a crowd and work a crowd like that, and just seeing them working with them, and then going back to a company like that where it's not exactly the focal point or everybody's strong suit, you're going to stand out a little bit. And I think that has really worked for Kenta in this particular instance.
So Kenta sat in Dusty Rhodes promo classes, right?
There you go.
You can't tell me, because he didn't cut these phenomenal promos when he was in. Oh well, look, maybe someone can correct me if there are. I don't recall them, but he's been great. It's funny because as his body has failed him, his personality has really taken over, which is a sign of a great pro wrestler, because that's usually what happens.
That's a great athlete. That's a sign of a great athlete.
Just changing your game as you get older. And Kenta is really, because again, he's not the Kenta of 2009, but again, none of us is what we were in 2009. So the fact that he's elevated his talking has been so great. And again, you can't tell me, again, I don't want to say his time in NXT was a waste, because if those Dusty Rhodes promo classes, he learned to tap into a part of him that is something, I think that it was worth it, maybe. Yeah. Probably isn't what he wanted it to be, for sure. But, yeah.
He definitely took something away from that.
Some dude is bothering me on Twitter, asking me to buy a website design from him, and he will not leave me alone, and it's distracting me, so now I have to go block him.
Oh, my goodness.
Trying to do a show
block
here.
With the quickness.
Block. 15 DMs is my limit.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised you even gave him that much.
Well, I'm like, okay, I'll talk about them. We talk about this. And he's like, you just keep sending me stuff. I'm like, I appreciate people who want business. But, I mean, at some point, you got to lean off the gas a little bit. So we'll discuss. Sorry.
So, hey, it's all good, man. Hey, that's what happens when you're in demand, JD. You're in demand right now.
Well, I needed a website done. And I'm like, because I can't build websites. So guy reach out to me. He's like, "Yeah, I'll build your website." I'm like, "Cool. What's your price?" Gives me a price. Like, let me talk about it. Let me look at it. Let me look at your work. And he's bugging me. I'm like, "I'm busy, man." So bad business.
Oh man.
My money is what people want more than anything. So yeah, man, I'm very excited for this show. I'm really looking forward. Like I said, Kenta and Kojima are something that could be really, really fun. Like the tag match, like you said, is going to be interesting. Evil and Sonata have an opportunity. It's not my deal, but the fans, like the native Japan fans, the ones that actually matter to New Japan's bottom line, seem really into it. So, we American fans forget sometimes that they don't book the company to us.
And I'm looking at the New Japan Wrestling website, and I see their singles record is 2-2. So there's a lot to this story with Sonata and Evil, and
former tag champs,
yeah, former
LIJ
tag champs
guys.
as well. There's a lot with this. So I think Sonata picks up the win here, hopefully. And honestly, I'm hoping he gets some love this year. I'm hoping he is. In my world, I would have him be the next IC champion whenever you do split that off and eventually have your tournament or whatever you do to crown the new champion. He would be my guy.
Bold.
I think there's something to him, man, and I think that title could be what pulls out that personality. Now he might fall on his face, and that's okay. That's why you have guys like Okada, Naito, Tanahashi ready to go, pick up the ball, and let's keep it moving.
We talk about an embarrassment of riches. I'm gonna throw a match at you. I want your opinion on the never openweight title with Shingo Takagi and Jeff Cobb.
I think this is a big opportunity for Jeff Cobb.
Biggest of his career.
The biggest opportunity of his career to not only show... Now, everybody knows he can go, but this is a big stage for him to show he can go. And he's got to be able to keep up. Because Shingo's going to be going at 100 miles per hour, and he's going to hit hard.
Shingo knows no other way.
That's what I mean. So if he's able to keep up and not look a step behind and really be able to carry his end of this match, you might be looking at in 2 years, you could be looking at another potential main eventer here in New Japan.
With Cobb, I don't think so, because he's an Empire and because he's under Ospreay.
See, that's partly why I think he could, though. Oh, wait, I guess it's not what they do. That's the American booking in me.
Yes, that's not how they book New Japan. Like, he will be like there's guys in Bullet Club that could have been, elevated, but they aren't. Like, they elevate one guy, one guy gets that elevation to the title. That being said, I think
that could have
Cobb's,
worked with him and Ospreay.
Maybe if they decide to turn Jeff, because my buddy John LaRocca, who does High Tension with us, who used to book Cobb in Premier Pro Wrestling out in California, he thinks Jeff Cobb's a natural babyface. That's what he says about him. I think it's interesting because, yes, but I think the majority of the Cobb work I've seen between his Lucha Underground and some of his Ring of Honor stuff, he's done a lot of heel. So, I mean, I don't know. I kind of see where he's coming from, but that's not what they're going to do here. Like, he's going against Shingo Takagi, an LIJ guy, who, again, that's a guy who should be a main eventer, but he's a Dragon Gate guy at heart, so they're never going to push him there. But I do think they can have a phenomenal match. Cobb, like you said, Cobb got to keep up. Let's see if Jeff Cobb can step up. I think he can, so I think it'll be a fun match.
I think he can too, but boy, oh boy, he's genuinely gonna have to. And when I say keep up, like I legit mean he's gonna have to keep up. Like there's gonna be no stopping in this match.
Shingo Takagi still is a Dragon Gate guy. Watch him wrestle; he still moves at that Dragon Gate pace. Like, he is one of the best pro wrestlers on the planet, and I think he's bigger than the never openweight title. Like, I think he could be a title contender, but they just don't book that way, so it is what it is. But Shingo is the man.
He's
so I'm really
he's
looking
one
forward to this
G1 tournament or New Japan Cup tournament win away from being in the main event.
If they decided to push to Shingo, people would love it. People would eat it up. He's amazing. He's fantastic. But, we'll see what happens.
I'm excited to see how this goes. I'm excited to...
Wait. Shh. Do you hear that?
What's that?
Do you hear that?
No.
It's the sound of internet tears when Tanahashi loses to the Great Okan.
Now look, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I know absolutely nothing about the Great Okan, so whenever when I tune into this match, however I do it, that'll be the first time I ever see him wrestle.
If you are expecting a what we think of as a New Japan style worker, you are not going to get that in Okan. Okan is Killer Khan 2.0. Like, he's out there doing the Mongolian chops, and he's got a ton of charisma. He can do that stuff. They book him, and he chooses to be a character, but they see dollar signs in the Great Okan as a character. And this is what they do. When it's your turn to get a big opportunity, who do they put you in there with? Hiroshi Tanahashi. And because Hiroshi Tanahashi is a mega star, losing creates stars. Happened with Okada, happened with Jay White. I think we could see this happen with, that was the story this year with him and Kota Ibushi. Was that Kota Ibushi surpassed his hero. I think you're going to see a guy throwing Mongolian chops going, yeah, chopping chopping Tanahashi and winning, and a bunch of internet marks are going to be so angry.
So this WrestleKingdom seems like it's going to be a little bit of a changing of the guard a bit. Kota Ibushi taking over, and we could potentially see, or at least it seems like we will see, the Great Okan and Will Ospreay picking up 2 wins over 2 New Japan icons.
I would not be surprised if, because Shingo's had that Never belt for a while, so it wouldn't surprise me if Jeff Cobb picked up the Never belt. So I think that in order, if you're going to take Empire seriously as a faction, you got to put them over strong out the gate. There's only 3 of them. So I think that's what you're going to see.
Wow. So Empire sweeps?
I do. I'm calling an Empire sweep.
Okay. Wow. Man, that is a very, very different. It is a very changing of the guard, and really opens things up for 2021. I mean, Okada is really out of the main event picture, and he loses to Ospreay. That sends him down a few pegs, and I wouldn't expect to see him back in the main event until probably the G1 again. Yeah,
you have so much, accrued interest in Kazuchika Okada that now you can use him to build other stars. And his loss, he's Teflon, man. He can lose. He's almost like The Rock was. He can lose to anybody. And, they look better because of it and get his heat or whatever you want to call it back, instantaneously.
Yeah,
so
he's definitely at that status.
He is, and he can help make Will Ospreay someone serious, and you can go back to the match. You can go back to it anytime you want. Like that, if that headlines Wrestle Kingdom next year, I won't be surprised. Because they do these long form stories. Like the rivalry with Tanahashi and Okada was years. So it wouldn't surprise me if this is the second really chapter in a long rivalry between the two. So I'm interested, man. I really am.
I'm excited. I know we normally do a show every other week. We might have to do another show next week just to talk about this. I'm excited about this show. I'm looking forward to it.
It should be the show of the year. Wow. New Japan. It should be just on paper. Like it's Wrestle Kingdom. Wrestle Kingdom's usually the show of the year.
Yeah, and it is a stat card. Like it legit is a stat card. There's at least 4 matches that could be match of the year, early match of the year contenders.
Yeah, absolutely. I expect Ibushi and Naito to get match of the year calls. I mean, it's January 4th. It's hard to make that determination now. Who knows where the world's going to be in a year? Lord knows I didn't think we'd be here. It would not surprise me if we had the match of the year right away. Hey, we didn't even talk about Hiromu and El Phantasmo. That's going to be another one that's off the charts. Like, there's not any bad matches on this card.
No,
these 2 nights. These. Yeah.
This is how you do a 2-night show. I mean, they have everything spread out. I couldn't imagine all of this being on one show.
It'd be too long.
Imagine. Yeah, it'd be too long. It'd be too much.
It'd be too long. Yeah. And it's so funny. Over the last few years, we've pushed the length of what a wrestling show is. And I think we've hit a breaking point where, 4 hours, man, is exhausting. And I understand AEW. I'm paying $50 for a show. Give me a lot of content. But, at some point, it's like, oh, geez.
That's one thing I think
slack.
WWE has started doing better with. They've really been
They've
cutting
been balancing
back.
their shows.
Yeah, they've been cutting back a lot on their pay-per-views, and they've had a couple of them not even be 3 hours. So, I mean, they've done a very good job as far as cutting back, and like some of those WrestleManias were just marathons, were absolutely ridiculous.
Oh
so,
God, yeah. I remember one year, I think it was 2017. I sat down, and I want to say I was on my couch for like 5.5 hours.
That was probably without the pre-show.
I think it was with the pre-show because I wanted to watch something on the pre-show that was interesting. I don't remember exactly. It was the year the Hardys came back. Something was interesting to me on the pre-show, so I watched the whole freaking thing, and it was just, I remember coming out of it. I mean, like, I was so exhausted by the main event, I just didn't care. And like, I think that can happen on these cards. Is like you get them up so long, like everyone's hot at first, and by the end of the show, you're like, whatever, man, just end.
And AEW has the most diehard of fans, so if you can't get them to stay invested, then you know your show's running a little long.
It's tough, and they've been pushing. So if Tony Khan's listening, I would say less is not necessary, or more is not necessary. How does that cliche go? I'm a writer. I just screwed it up. Whatever. Tony, make your show shorter.
And yeah, Tony. And if you are listening, we'd love to have you on the show. That's just
like a contract. Just not to do anything in particular, but just like a contract.
Well, this is another great conversation. We started going on. We went on a nice little tangent about belts. I think people will get a kick out of it. I'm definitely putting all those pictures up, though. I want people to see all the different belts and see the greatness that the history has given us. The great looking belts.
I didn't think we'd have a belt hunter segment like Kenny Omega ourselves. But that was a lot of fun.
I mean, maybe you know what? While we playing, we might just need to do a full show on belts and just talk about the different belts and stuff like that. Because I'm sure we very easily could just off of that. I'm
game. I'm totally game for that.
I think we should definitely do a belt type thing. Something with belts, because I enjoyed that as well. It's very cool looking at the different belts and kind of the history behind it, especially with you being able to break it down like that.
I enjoy that kind of stuff. Like I would never pay money. I'm far too cheap to pay money to own an actual belt. I got to think about having trophies that you didn't win. Like, that's the athlete in me. It's like, you didn't win that. You shouldn't have it.
I feel you on that. I 100% get you on that. That ain't yours.
So that's always how I feel when I see guys walking around with these belts. I'm like, you didn't do anything to get that. So, but that's the jock in me talking. So, yeah, let's do this again.
Oh, definitely. JD, before we go, tell everyone where they can find you on their socials.
Oh, @JD_Oliva on Twitter. Best place to follow me. You can see my wild wrestling takes. I talk about writing, talk about amateur wrestling a lot. That's kind of where I live.
And you can find me on Twitter, for Marvel vs. DC. JD, Regular Scott. We'll talk to y'all next time.
This is Defy Life.